Hi, I'm Kim Sharp, and you're watching Community Checkup. This is a show where we explore a variety of health topics, from the good to the bad, and sometimes the scary. And today's topic definitely falls into that last category, which is the scary one, because we're going to talk about cancer. Even that word evokes just this reaction in my gut. So I know that it must do that to you too, but hang with me, because at the end of today's show, I really want you to understand that there is hope right here in our community for anyone who has to go through the cancer journey. And that hope is encompassed in a brand new cancer center that we have here in northern Colorado. And here to help us explore that cancer and to talk about what those services look like is Dr. Matt Sorensen, who's the Medical Director for Oncology for the University of Colorado North, and Joanne Lovins, who is like the CEO of Oncology for Northern Colorado. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, our pleasure.
So Joanne, how relevant is this topic for me, for our viewers? How relevant is this topic of cancer for everyone watching?
Well, it's quite relevant, and people are actually surprised to know how common cancer is until it strikes them, and then they become more informed. Sadly, 1 out of 3 people will at some time be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. And as we survey people in the community families, if you were to survey the people on your block, you would find that 3 out of 4 families at some point were dealing with cancer. In Larimer County alone, there are over 1,200 people diagnosed every year with cancer. So it's around us. The other thing that's going to seem like it's more common around us, risk is an age factor for cancer. So the older we get, the more likely it is that we will be diagnosed. And it starts to increase after 60. And I know there was an article in the paper a couple weeks ago that showed how we're aging in place here in Fort Collins. And so if you stay here for another 20 years, you're going to say, it seems like more people have cancer. It's true because we're aging in place.
Okay, all right. So obviously it's relevant then. Sounds like it could touch any one of us, or at least someone that we love at any time in our life. But let's talk about this cancer center, because that's what I really want to get to here, because there's so much hope and inspiration provided there. From your perspective, Dr. Sorensen, what are the aspects of this new center that really make it world class?
Well, I'm not sure if we have enough time. I think there are many things that went into the not only the building of the cancer center itself as a building, but also planning for how services were going to be provided within the center. And there is a tremendous amount of organization and structure and expertise that have to go into developing what we have come to call service lines. So we, Joanne and myself, work within our oncology service line, which is a very, what I would call a new and improved way to offer care to patients with cancer. As far as the center itself, the building was designed by folks who are right now working within it. Okay, so there were a large number of people that came together from all disciplines, okay, and not just physicians, nurses, support staff, front desk staff, everybody who has an experience with a patient and their family members that come through the door. So the folks that put the center together took everybody's input and created this wonderful thing. And it was amazing, the process of watching the plans come together to say something and watch it come up as a rough drawing on a piece of paper to say, oh my goodness, that's exactly what we were
survivors involved in the planning?
Yes, absolutely. And it was, to be honest, one of I would say absolutely the most important day, the most important experience that we had was with one of our survivors who had helped us tremendously with this process, who had a very striking reaction to coming into our old space where we had been before, and seeing the infusion center, which was basically right next to where the exam rooms are situated. And it was a very visceral response. It brought back a tremendous amount of memory to be back in that same kind of scenario. But everybody who came together to have input for how this place was going to turn out, it's even better than we had expected.
Well, let's talk about those service lines that you mentioned.
Yeah.
What are they? Tell us what's provided there.
Well, so it's a way of reorganizing all the programs and services that health systems have nowadays. So it's the inpatient, but also all the outpatient stuff, the clinics, et cetera, around a patient population or a kind of disease. So the service line that we're responsible for is a cancer service line. And so we have reorganized how we deliver care based on what is most valuable to the patient and the patient experience. That's the center of it. As Dr. Sorensen mentioned, we had this one patient leading a survivor advisory group, Vicki Wagner, and she just spoke for them over and over and over, so we would know what was most valuable. But it starts really with the suspicion that your physician has that you might have cancer, going through a diagnosis, treatment planning, treatment, and into survivorship. But what's the most value, so that I can take the resources administratively, rearrange things, and keep the stuff that offers value to the patient and remove all the barriers that get in the way.
Right.
It's just a different way of looking at healthcare, and the entire health system is actually restructuring that way.
So what are those specific pieces that offer that value? What are those special things that this center and that you provide? What are they?
One of the key things that we wanted to work on was efficiency. All right, and when somebody is diagnosed with cancer, any kind of cancer, or even if there's a suspicion, let's say, from a primary care doctor that could be happening, what we know is that a lot of other things tend to shut off at that very moment, and it becomes something that you cannot help but think about, obviously. So what we've really strived to do is to cut down what we have come to call sleepless nights, and to have a very, very efficient and structured process for patients and their families to walk a road, but for the road to be a little smoother and hopefully quite a bit shorter than it would have been if these were not structured this way. Mm-hmm. So we see these, we'll call them transition points. Okay, there's the initial news that cancer could potentially be happening, and that's kind of akin to a bomb going off. Mm-hmm. But the time that tends to be one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult in the whole journey, is right off the bat, right when the diagnosis is made. So that comes by way of, let's say, somebody having symptoms that lead to an imaging study that is abnormal, an X-ray, a CAT scan, an MRI, and then the need for a biopsy. Okay, cancer is confirmed by a biopsy. And from there, it leads to what we call staging. It means where is the cancer, and it helps us put together an accurate and goal-appropriate treatment plan for any patient that comes through.
Mm-hmm. Can I have you just pause?
Yeah.
I found this ad in a local magazine, and it talks about, you see that? It talks about this team approach mm-hmm. to plans for cancer patients. Right. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and it's a great segue too, because it leads us into the next stage of what we consider to be the journey of a patient going through cancer care, which is the treatment planning phase. Okay, this is the most critical from a provider's standpoint. It's the most critical to make sure that the person is being treated with the kinds of therapies that they should be treated with. So the way that the team aspect comes in is, in the olden days, we're kind of starting to think of the old ways now. Somebody would come to, let's say, see me first in the clinic, and I would then realize that the patient would need to see a radiation oncologist, and they would also need to see a surgeon. And we're now coming out of, let's say, for example, financially very trying times for many folks. Well, we need to have somebody visit with a financial advisor. We also know that the family situation is is set into upheaval many times with a cancer diagnosis. So a person will need to see a social worker or a counselor. In the old setup, that is something that would have been, let's call it referral based, and there would have been a long period of wait or a significant period of wait to see those people. Now, if we have what we call a service line mentality and a team mentality, all of those folks are, if they are needed, okay, are present from the beginning. So we have our team moving forward, and really the goal of the whole thing is I would want for any patient that comes to see me to see a visit to the cancer center as not, I'm going to see my doctor, I'm going to see my team.
So do you expect survivor rates to increase based on these new approaches and the new technologies that are offered?
Yeah, we're seeing improvement in survival year after year. We're also seeing that at times cancer can be a chronic disease as well. And so we might be able to control it. It might not go away completely, but people are living longer with it as well. So two things we heard from our survivor advisory group. We want the innovation. We want to know that you have defined what is the best treatment for me for my cancer, but also treat me as a whole person as well, sort of body, mind, soul. And in our very health conscious city, people want to continue to lead great lives, high quality lives. So we're looking at all of that together. And we are finding, and you'll hear later, that really it's beginning to emerge in the research that when you feel well, you probably do better.
Right. All right, well, I want to shift gears now and actually talk about that survivorship piece. And I know we have another guest who's going to join us. So, Dr. Sorensen, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
And,
Pleasure.
All right. All right, well, joining us now is Lisa Radice, who's a nurse practitioner with the Cancer Center. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So what role do you play in this Cancer Center?
Well, I think the best way to describe it is how I explain it to the patients when they're meeting with me for the first time. I usually tell the patient that your physician is responsible for your treatment plan. How are we going to manage this cancer? And my job as a nurse practitioner is to help get you through it. The focus of most of my interventions have to do with supportive care and how we support the patient through the cancer journey.
Are you like a navigator then? Do you help people navigate through this process?
I don't help with navigation as much, but we do have nurse navigators that help both with the diagnostic phase and with the process during cancer treatment of how to get patients around and through the cancer services. My focus is more in the clinic and helping support the side effects of cancer treatment, both during and after their cancer treatment.
Okay. And I also heard something about a survivorship group that you co-run or co-lead. Could you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Oh, this is a passion of mine. I'm so excited. We at UC Health use the definition of survivorship starting from the moment of cancer diagnosis. It is a very inclusive term, and so survivorship is all about surviving and thriving during and after your cancer diagnosis and treatment. So we are doing a survivorship program that's specifically focused on the aftercare of patients. We know that a lot of people come into cancer treatment feeling very strong and very healthy, but at the end of their chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, they oftentimes have quite a bit of side effects, and they find themselves not at the level of the health that they were when they were first diagnosed. So the purpose of the survivorship program is to help return them to health and get them strong again, both from a cancer standpoint, but from a whole person standpoint, where you do medical counseling, talking about what the patient should expect from a short-term and a long-term standpoint, what risks they might have long-term, and how do we best manage those risks, and how can we affect lifestyle change to reduce risk of chronic disease in general with diet and exercise. So part of our survivorship program closely integrates rehabilitation. So we have a physical therapist that also evaluates the patient, talks about the importance of exercise, and also fits the needs if they're having, shoulder mobility problems or something else as a consequence of their cancer therapy. We have a social worker counselor that also meets with the patient that talks about the emotional roller coaster that a person goes through after their cancer treatment.
I can only imagine.
And that's really, I think, what catches so many people off guard is they think they should be done with treatment and be, woohoo, I'm done with treatment. And there's an emptiness that they feel, and they feel almost isolated or lost. And so it is our responsibility to help care for the patient during that time.
So all of this kind of care is truly under the roof of our center.
Absolutely.
What kinds of architectural features are there in the center to support all of this care that Lisa just described for us?
Well, Kim, again, based on feedback from our survivor advisory group, one of the things they complained about was the fact of how many visits you have to go through and how they were going all over town. And in fact, we found a statistic out there that the average cancer patient has over 100 visits the first year. So think about going to the grocery store twice a week.
Right.
That would be overwhelming for me.
Would be overwhelming.
And think about being sick and trying to keep your family going and trying to work. So the one thing was, can we get everything in under one roof, or almost everything under one roof? So a lot of the services that Dr. Sorensen spoke about and that Lisa has now talked about, how can we get everything so it's accessible in one place for people? The other thing they talked about is that moment when you're diagnosed. Every single one of them could remember that specific moment. It's terrifying. And as he mentioned, there's upheaval in the family. Your life is turned upside down at that moment. So the first thing we did was we talked about what's it like when you go in. And if you'll see pictures of this, you'll note that the lobby is very different from other medical office buildings on our Harmony campus. It's meant to be warm and welcoming, and in fact, you're greeted by a concierge and a volunteer. And many of the volunteers are actually cancer survivors themselves, so they can say, I know what you're going through, and you're going to be okay. We're here for you. And then we move you along to different places. The other thing that we did was co-located a lot of these services. So, in fact, where the clinic is, right next to the clinic is where you would see counseling and social work. Right in the clinic is where you'd have an appointment, say, with a dietitian or a rehab specialist. And the whole idea is that it's all together in one place. And then it's made to be very efficient. The other thing was that the infusion center is up on the second floor, and we put the space into where patients are and what adds value for patients. So there's plenty of exam rooms. You don't feel like you're jammed in there in any way. And the infusion room, even when it's crowded, you don't feel crowded.
So what's the takeaway message for people in this whole journey and this whole new center that we have? What's the takeaway?
It's a hard journey. We know it is. Our survivors have told us about it. They've told us about their really difficult places. One of the things that we did is we put our nurse navigators, and I've explained that to people as if it's like having an oncology nurse in your family, how they would guide you every step of the way. We have those nursing experts. They are actually located right behind the front desk, their offices. That's who you would be in touch with if you call the cancer hotline. That's who can come out to greet you as a new patient. I think the take home is that we're going to be here for you. We have great expertise for you through the whole journey, and it's not just about your cancer treatment. It's about treating you as a whole person, and it's about getting you back into your life afterwards.
Right. Do you have anything to add to that, Lisa?
I very much agree with what Joanne said. I think our focus in our cancer center is about the patient and the patient's experience, understanding how difficult it is from the moment of diagnosis for the balance of their life. And we are offering support and healing and courage throughout that process.
All right. All right, Joanne, thank you so much for being here with me today. And thank you, Lisa, for joining us. And I also want to thank Dr. Sorensen, who had to scoot out of here a little early. And of course, I want to thank our viewers for hanging with us in this really tough topic about cancer. And I also want to thank the University of Colorado Health for sponsoring our show. So stay tuned for the next one. Never know what it's going to be about.